Marc Ellison is a photojournalist who works a lot in Africa, and he put together his thoughts on this issue.
Last summer, I interviewed 40 formerly abducted women in northern Uganda who have escaped from the LRA and are now attempting to reintegrate into their pre-conflict communities. I trained 5 of them to use digital cameras so that they could document the challenges they must negotiate in post-conflict Uganda. The resulting images are evidence that the Kony 2012 video is a triumph of advertising over information. The pictures and video the women took aren't as slick as the documentary produced by Invisible Children, but it's a realistic depiction of what life in Uganda is like for them now. Bringing Kony to justice is a peripheral concern for these women, many of whom say that life was better for them in the LRA. Arresting Kony won't reduce the stigmatization they experience within their communities, put food on the table, combat the PTSD and nightmares affecting them. It won't pay for HIV testing and medications, or address the atrocities perpetrated by the Ugandan military in their drive to force Kony out of Uganda. But the Invisible Children video mentions none of this. Invisible Children seems to have lost sight of those they have set out to help in the first place. Sure, they've set up 11 schools and they've offered vocational training like tailoring. But in talking to these women now, I can tell you that isn't enough.
So if Uganda is mostly about recovery now, could it not be argued that most of the money should go towards that? What do you guys think?
The money that they're making should go to these kids. It should go to the children. It should go back to Uganda, because this is what they're saying it's about. You can't make money off this issue and not really put the money back there. Raising awareness is one thing. We need to implement change, and we need to do it with the Ugandan people. And many of these young people in Uganda are active. They're not as silent as we make them to be. We silence them with videos like this.
My family is actually from Uganda as well, and they fled during a war, and that's the reason that I was born here in Canada. So it was really interesting for me when I watched this video, because the first thing I thought was, what do people from Uganda think about this video? And of course, a lot of people in Uganda and northern Uganda don't have access to internet. So a charity that works in northern Uganda had a screening for people that are most affected by the LRA. Take a look.
For many people here, the video is simply puzzling. It contains footage of an American man, his son, and it documents events that happened here in northern Uganda years ago. But as the film progresses, puzzlement turns into anger.
There are some kind of people, there are some kind of NGO who are trying to mobilize funds using the atrocities committed in northern Uganda.
So these are all white men, these are films, different from northern Uganda.
Rocks are thrown, the screening comes to a halt, and the crowd scatters into the night. Kony 2012 may be the most watched video on YouTube this year, but it clearly doesn't resonate with many of the people it claims it's meant to help.
How do you feel now watching that?
I think it's really important that we take our cues to some extent from the Ugandans. There have been other reports of Ugandans saying, you know, what the deal with these bracelets, and this guy, you know, murdered my sister. Why do I want his name on my t-shirt? And I think that's a really good point. And I think that's something we should ask ourselves too. Like, why are we buying these t-shirts and these wristbands about this guy?
Can I just add, there was one thing in the video, in the 30 minutes, they actually never mentioned Museveni, the president of Uganda. He needs to be held accountable to some degree because he's been in control for 26 years. For as long as the LRA has been around, he's been president. And I feel nervous just saying that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if I'm the only person getting this message, but the message is people taking control of policing. You know, if a country is too corrupt to reprimand somebody who has been raping a country for years, let's put pressure on our political officials to reprimand that person. So this is about prevention, so that the next person who comes along will now, if they don't fear their government, they're going to fear the people.
Very quickly, I want to say, how many people in this room know the name Thomas Lubanga? Right. Very few of you do. So if you don't know who he is, there is a major conviction of this particular gentleman that came out today. And this is what is interesting. So everybody's focusing on Kony 2012, and you don't even know that there are those in the International Criminal Court who today have been convicted for the use of child soldiers.
Grant, can we get your final thoughts?
to say that this is the beginning, this is just the start of something, that's not true at all. People need to understand that this is a much more complex long-term issue than you see in the video.
Very good point. Jonah, do you have any final thoughts?
The video focuses on Uganda, and then since then the backlash has been saying, oh, well, he hasn't been in Uganda, so the LRA's done. That's been that gotcha point that everybody's been talking about. But the LRA is active. They are abducting people as it stands. They are killing people still. And the only way that you're going to stop them is through a military solution of some kind.
Mike, do you have any final thoughts you want to add?
I think to take something away for our own lives, there's a new media environment. This video people look at as a documentary, people read it as a documentary or as a news story. It's neither. It's an organization soliciting donations, and we're getting it straight from that source. Justin Bieber or Rihanna tweeting something doesn't mean that it's credible. They don't have a degree in human rights. They're not journalists, and we shouldn't expect them to be. Right. So when we see these videos come through, and there will be more given the success, we need to take it upon ourselves to fact check, to deem the credibility, and then to really see if we believe the message or not. And I think that's something that we can learn from Kony and go forward with. Was social media effective in all of this, or did it hinder the issue that we should actually all be talking about, with the fact that there are still child soldiers out there, the fact that Uganda still needs help? What do you think? Let us know. Keep tweeting about it and use the hashtag MTV Kony. Thank you so much to everybody here for joining us tonight.